Hey guys, it's Cece, and today I'm here to talk about all of the things that I read in the month of April. In the month of April, I read a grand total of 10 things. One of those was a graphic novel, and the rest were all full books. And so I'm doing things a little differently today, and let me tell you why. In March, I had one of the best reading months I've ever had in my life. I gave an unprecedented 4 books that I read that month 5 stars. Unheard of. I rarely give out 1 5-star a month, and I give out 4. So it was inevitable that the month following that would be a mega crash, and it was. I have 2 books that I gave 1 star this month. If there is anything that is more rare than a 5-star, it is a 1-star. So I'm going to mix things up today, and instead of going through everything I read chronologically, I'm going to do it by rating. So I'm going to start with the books I gave 1 star, and then build up to my favorite book of the month so that we end on a little bit of positivity. Maybe that'll make me feel better about what I read this month. I did participate in 1 readathon near the beginning of the month. That was Ribsat. There are 2 vlogs because it was 2 full weeks of readathon if you want to go and watch those. As far as my challenges for each month, every month I have to read 1 book that's a 2017 release and 1 book from my top 15 to read in 2017 list, both of which are things that I accomplished. The book off of my top 15 to read in 2017 was Look Both Ways by Alison Cherry. And honestly, I read a few 2017 releases. I read American Street by Evie Zoboi. I read The One Memory of Flora Banks by Emily Barr. I read How to Make a Wish by Ashley Herring Blake. And It's Always the Husband by Michele Campbell. All 2017 releases, so I definitely accomplished that goal. Now let's get into the books that I read in the month of April, starting with my lowest rating, and that was a 1 star. So the thing that I enjoyed reading the least in April, my least favorite read of April, that I gave a 1 star to was Look Both Ways by Alison Cherry. This is about a girl named Brooklyn, and she goes to a summer camp. It's a summer, acting camp for kids who are really prestigious. Once she gets there, she moves in with her roommate Zoe, and she starts having sort of confusing feelings for that roommate, and stuff kind of takes off from there. So let me get into something real fast, because everything about the way this book is billed is that it is a female-female romance. This is the cover. On the inside, it says that Brooklyn and Zoe start to be something more. Everything about this book is billed as a female-female romance, and it is not. It is unequivocally not a female-female romance, and in fact, if a questioning girl was looking for a book to read, I would sooner, drop-kick this book into oblivion than have her within 5 feet of it. If I had read this 3 years ago, when I was questioning my sexuality, it could have done irreparable damage to how I was trying to figure myself out. But beyond that, Zoe is a bisexual character who plays up every single possible bisexual stereotype in the book. She's promiscuous. She chooses men over women, but at the same time she has to have both men and women. She's greedy, so she's allowed to date other people, but Brooklyn isn't. Pushy when it comes to sex. Any bi stereotype, Zoe plays it up. And in general, I'm furious that this was billed as a female-female romance. I'm furious that this is listed on LGBTQIA+ lists. I was furious for days after reading this because so many of the feelings that Brooklyn was feeling at the beginning were things that I identified with strongly, and to have all of that ripped away and be like, no, that's just how girls feel about each other when they're friends, was incredibly damaging. So I give this 1 star. Clearly, I wasn't a fan. The next book that I want to talk about that I also gave 1 star, maybe a 1.5, is It's Always the Husband by Michele Campbell. This just came out, or is coming out soon. I don't know, it's a thriller. Basically, this is told in 2 separate times. The first is the freshman year of these 3 girls who were roommates and become best friends, and the second part of it is 20 years later when they're still dealing with something terrible that happened freshman year that takes forever to get to. So I know the author has been to college. That's a confirmable fact, but I still felt myself doubting that as I was reading this book, because it felt like a person who wrote it who had never been to college, who doesn't know what college is like, trying to write college, and that was a little agonizing. The amount of girl hate, the sheer amount of girl hate in this book. All the characters were flat, and the title, frankly, doesn't make that much sense along with the content of the book. You don't get to the It's Always the Husband bit until the last 1/4 maybe, and the twist is absurd. I really didn't like this book, clearly. I gave it 1 star, maybe a 1.5. I guess it was rough. Didn't like it. The next book that I read was How to Hang a Witch by Adriana Mather. This book follows a girl named Sam when she moves from New York to Salem, Massachusetts, and when she gets there, she finds that because of her last name, people are not so happy that she's there. There's a group of people called the Descendants. They are descendants of people who were killed in the witch trials, and Sam is a descendant of Cotton Mather, who is pretty integral to the witch trials themselves. But at the same time, all of these accidents keep happening, people keep getting hurt, all of it's leading back to Sam, and she's just trying to figure out what's going on. I was really hoping for like a happy, fun witch book, or not happy, but like a fun witch book. I'm always trying to find books about witches, and this still wasn't it. There was some fun here, there was a bit of light enjoyment if you just kind of let your mind fade to the background and just read mindlessly. It was really tropey was my problem, like all the YA tropes. All of them. There's one scene in particular where she goes to a Halloween party and she makes really, like, judgy remarks where she's like, oh, I just didn't get why girls had to dress so slutty on Halloween, and I felt really proud of myself for wearing combat boots, and I almost closed the book and stopped right there because I hate that. I hate that. Like, you're not better than someone else because you wore combat boots and didn't wear a revealing costume at Halloween. That doesn't make you a better person in any way. There's some mindless fun involved in this. Witchy stuff happens more towards the end that's kind of fun, and it was like, well, if this had been what was happening for the whole book instead of just at the end, then I'd be really happy. Or if this had been like a prequel to a series about witches, that would have been great. But as it stands, it was just kind of tropey and forgettable, and I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. We also have American Street by E.B. Zoboi. So, this came out in February, and it's about this girl named Fabiola when she is trying to emigrate with her mother from Haiti to America. Fabiola makes it through. Her mother does not. She's detained by U.S. immigration, and so Fabiola is forced to go to Detroit on her own, meet up with her cousins and her aunt, and try to integrate into American life without the help of her mother. While she's there, she is offered a deal that could put her family in danger, but also could possibly mean the release of her mother, and Fabiola really has to confront what she's willing to do to get her mother there and to live the American dream. Okay, so my main problem with this book was that I feel like there was way too much going on. I think that if this had had like 4 less plots, then it could have been a really great book. But as it stands, it just sort of happened and then it was over and I was kind of like, well, I read that. Like certain plots, these huge plots would be left for 75 pages at a time because we had to investigate all of these other plots that were going on at the same time. This is not that long a book. And there was so much going on that I could never really focus in and care about one of those specific plots, so by the time it got to the end, it really fell flat. I liked the way some of the magical realism was done. It's got a magical realism thing, a lot of voodoo culture that was interesting, and I did really like E.B. Zoboi's writing. I would read something else that she had written. This was a debut, and I'm interested in seeing where she goes next. But I thought this was just a bit too overstuffed, and I wound up giving it 3 out of 5 stars. Alright, next we have a book kind of out of left field, and that is Rubyfruit Jungle by Rita Mae Brown. So this is out of left field because I have a friend, he works at a bookstore, and he wanted me to come to one of his book club meetings. I have been terrible and busy, and I haven't been able to come to any of them, and he was like, you should read Rubyfruit Jungle, and Janelle had a copy, so I read it, and then I wound up being busy the day of the book club. I'm so sorry, Robert. I'm so sorry still. This is kind of like a classic lesbian coming-of-age story that came out in the 1980s, and I actually liked it more than I was expecting to. So, coming-of-age story, it's about a girl named Molly Bolt who was born a bastard and then raised by a really low-income Southern family. It starts out when she's a kid, she's eventually kicked out of college and tries to make it in New York as a filmmaker, and through it all, I mean, she just gays it up. She's a lesbian. She's just trying to find them ladies. Molly was really vibrant and jumped off the page, and I understood why this was a book that was passed around a lot. I understood that. Some of the characters were a bit odd. I did really like Molly, and I liked the story. I thought it was interesting, and I mean, I'm always interested in reading like classic lesbian stuff. I've read a lot at this point. I've like really, in the past couple of years, upped my lesbian game and read a lot of classic queer lady stuff, so this was just another important piece of that. I'm glad I read it. I'm still gonna talk to Robert about it, even though I was terrible and didn't go to his book club. Hopefully I'll go to another one soon. I feel so bad. I gave this book a 3.5 out of 5 stars. I'm definitely glad that I read it, and I understand where the hype came from. Next up, we have The One Memory of Flora Banks by Emily Barr. I just barely posted like a video that I did that was sponsored by Penguin Teen yesterday about this book if you want to go and see it. It's got a spoiler-free review section, and then I talk about a memory I would never want to forget. This book is about a girl named Flora Banks. She's 17 years old, and she hasn't been able to create new memories since she was 10 years old and had a tumor removed from her brain. And then one day she kisses a boy, her best friend's boyfriend, and remarkably when she wakes up the next morning, that memory is still in her head. The boy moves away, he goes to Norway, and Flora decides to chase after him to try to figure out why this is the memory that she has, and the only things that she has to guide her in this search are the notes that she writes on her arm and the tattoo that she has on her hand that says, "Flora, be brave." So in that review, I kind of commented that this was a midway point between a movie like Memento and a movie like 50 First Dates. It's a bit more like Memento in the like thriller aspect, the notes on your arms to get to the bottom of a mystery, but it's a bit closer to 50 First Dates in that it's not nearly so gritty as Memento is. This is not a book about love curing mental illness, if you're concerned. That's what I was worried about. And honestly, it was just a really intriguing book. Like, I flew through it. It was fast-paced and interesting. Honestly, I really liked it. I wound up giving it 4 out of 5 stars. I wasn't expecting to really enjoy it as much as I did, and I'm glad that Penguin sent me this book and got me to read it, because I really liked it. And it came out today, May 2nd. Woo! Okay, so The Fate of the Tearling by Erika Johansen. I finally finished reading the Queen of the Tearling trilogy, and sadly, this was kind of a letdown. Obviously, this is pretty high up in my list of books. I didn't hate it because I liked everything but the very end where it did one of my least favorite possible tropes. This is the 3rd book in a series. I'm not going to tell you about the books. I've talked about them plenty. They're fabulous, high fantasy, political. They're great. I really liked Kelsey's development in this book, our main character. I still think that Kelsey is an amazing lead, and I adore her as a character and the development that she goes through over the course of the series. I gave this book like a 4-star, tentatively. Maybe I'm being a little too gentle on it because I've loved the other 2 books so much, but it was really good, just apart from the ending. But now I am done with the Queen of the Tearling trilogy. I finished up a series this year. Okay, closing in on the end here, we have The Seafarers Kiss by Julia Ember. This is going to be released on May 4th by Duet Press. I will leave a link below in the description if you would like to go and grab yourself a copy. This is a female Norse retelling of The Little Mermaid, which sounds great. If that interests you, I understand. It got me too. So, about a mermaid named Ursel, and she starts to fall for a human girl named Ragna. Sadly, Ursel's best friend finds her with Ragna, and he gives her a choice that she either has to say goodbye to her forever, or she's going to face the wrath of the Mer King. She is not happy with either of those options, so she seeks the help of the god Loki. This was really, really great. It took a little bit to get to the more Little Mermaid-esque elements of the book, and once it did, that's really when it hit its stride for me, and I really started to fall for Ursel as a character. I really, really liked her relationship with Ragna. I thought they were really strong. I mean, come on, this is a queer retelling of a fairy tale that I love. Of course, I was going to really, really enjoy it. It was fun and original and different, so make sure to go pick yourself up a copy on May 4th. Link in the description, and yeah, keep an eye out for The Seafarers Kiss online because I really liked it. Second to last, we've got The Unbeatable Squirrel Girl. This is Volume 1, Squirrel Power. Who is this by? Ryan North and Erika Henderson. That's who this is by. So Squirrel Girl is part of the Marvel comic universe, and that's all kinds of wonderful. Basically, she is this girl who has squirrel powers. So she has the strength and agility of a squirrel that's like proportional to her size as a human. She's hysterical. This is so incredibly funny. I want to show you some of the art. So this is one of my favorite pages. There are tweets. There are tweet pages. This is some of the art of the character. Doreen Green is a fabulous character. She was a really enjoyable superhero. I want to read about 1,100 billion more pages about her. Iron Man makes the barest appearances in the form of tweets because they all tweet each other, and that's incredible. I don't read a lot of comics about superheroes. They just aren't my thing. This was 100 zillion% my thing. I loved it. It was adorable and funny and fabulous and full of like girl power, and I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I really want to read another volume. Okay, we're at the end. My very favorite book that I read in the month of April was How to Make a Wish by Ashley Herring Blake, and this is being released today, May 2nd. This is an Own Voices book about a bisexual protagonist. So Grace has always had a complicated relationship with her mother. Her mother has never really been there for her, and it's forced Grace to grow up really quickly and to become the mature person in their relationship. This new girl, Eve, moves into town, and she has recently lost her mother, and Eve seeks out Grace. They start to get involved in a relationship, but at the same time, it's making Grace's relationship with her mother more complicated because Eve doesn't see what a negative force her mother is, and she's just longing for that mother-daughter connection. This book did so many things right. So first of all, bisexual rep, it was done excellently. Also, there was a great discussion about being biracial. Eve is biracial, and she talks a lot about that. Also, the concept of really draining and damaging parent-child relationships. Grace's relationship with her mother was hard to read about because every time her mother does something, you know exactly how much that is going to hurt Grace, and her mother just doesn't see it, and that's heartbreaking to read, but it was done with such honesty, and it was heartbreaking, but beautiful. I loved the relationship between Grace and Eve. It was a great mix of being like summery and such this new relationship while also being really heartfelt, and they had these conversations that would just like make me cry from time to time. This was exactly the contemporary that I was looking for, and I'm so glad I got the chance to read it a little bit early. I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. And clearly, I was pretty passionate about it. Okay guys, there you go. Those are all of the books that I read in the month of April. What did you read in the month of April? What were your favorites and least favorites? Also, how did you feel about the way I did this wrap up, going from least favorite to most favorite? Did you like it? Do you prefer it when I go chronologically? Should I go back to that? Be curious to hear your thoughts. Please let me know if you have read any of these books and your thoughts on those as well. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in another video very soon. Bye!